huge difference until the players really are accustomed to the patch, and that only comes with experience, it only comes with how many hours they put into the game. And I do expect some of those changes to make a big impact today.
Well, as you can clearly see, our first match is good to go. Thanks for sticking with us. As now, already actually an aggressive push. k1llsen, I mean, you're gonna know immediately fresh off the spawn, you're good to go. You've got the orb, you had heavy side spawn, you got a super shotgun. I mean, that's it. That's all you need to make a giant push. And clearly k1llsen getting the ball rolling here. 20 seconds in and already 2-0.
And k1llsen, as we talked about in the intro, is one of these players that he has one of the best understandings of how far he can push the limits and when to push the limits. And that start was exactly that. The pressure's been up already, as you said, 2-0. nosfa did get in, steal away that Mega, but it doesn't last him very long, as he's already eaten all of the damage and more. Struggling to get onto the map. He hasn't got the long-range weapons he needs, so he's just trying to use the speed to run away, but k1llsen's positioning is on point. He is whittling down nosfa. Smart to actually
no!
But the damage is so big from nosfa. He thinks he could do some more. And it is now 3-0 catch up. They will trade once again, but nosfa's done enough to keep k1llsen low enough to keep the pressure on now.
Absolutely. I mean, that shotgun exchange there for k1llsen definitely going to frustrate him a little bit, but you know what, LG happy to just handle that all over. And I've liked the plays from k1llsen so far. I think very suffocating is the word. Even with the last cycle of items, using that orb to kind of just instantly get in and not necessarily take the Mega, but make sure that nosfa doesn't get it and then mount any kind of stack to build a comeback or get himself on the board, right? It's just present forever and always. But so far, nosfa was able to secure himself at least one frag here. Problem is, as long as this armor is not available to him, he's going to be tender. k1llsen's been hitting some really good LG so far, and that is just k1llsen. Lovely little turnaround there.
Yeah, that first move off the spawn to shoot on end, steal away that LG, I thought was a little bit greedy, but he got away with it. But having done that and got away almost scot-free, he realized that he could then push on in just after the Mega. The split was enough for him to cut nosfa. And this is the position k1llsen loves. You can see him here just working his opponent, forcing him away from the Mega. He's going to give up the heavy, but he knows he can deal some chip damage, and so he'll work the map, keep nosfa away, and there you go. He realizes the weapon advantage, 42 damage, unreturned. Every little bit counts, so this is the positioning he loves. Standing on that mid-ground between the two choke points, what is nosfa meant to do here?
Especially with that Mega being the first item, but timing-wise and even the inclusion of the orb, is k1llsen going to look to maybe steal away? Trying to get a call out on where he might try and retreat to, but on a map this small, that split may sound significant, but it's not. Now he's listening out, he knows he's safe, and hang on a minute actually, the delay on the items?
Yeah, I really like that. He knows exactly the timing of the heavy now, he's done damage, and it's all part of the grander plan here.
Now, nosfa did get a little bit of extra information himself, so it took a little bit of time for that drone to go down. So right before it did, he did see the Mega hadn't been taken yet.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a mix in the plan, but k1llsen, you can always just see how methodical things are. And yeah, stuck there, miserable. Nothing you can do. See you later, mate.
And he's feeling so confident he's even going to do a further delay of the items here as he realizes he can pick up the Mega and get back across to the heavy in time. nosfa spawns over by the RL. He goes up to get the weapon, so the heavy's not going to be picked up just yet. nosfa might realize it now, which he has obviously taken it, but you can see he's trying incredibly hard to do anything to k1llsen. And he's doing damage, but it's in between these item pickups. This is the first time, though, it's been done where there's a sizable split on the items and still he cannot make it count.
But that was just perfect positional play from k1llsen. You know it's going to be super shotgun spawn. You know they're going to have lots of damage. But I mean, that's such a tiny little choke point that all k1llsen really had to do was just play his standard LG, and he's going to get most of the damage there. Where does nosfa go, you know? However, 9-2, not even halfway through yet, and a significant mountain is being put in front of nosfa so far. But that delay in the items has been just forever and always challenging it. This LG has just been frustratingly on point as k1llsen just continues the pain.
We asked in the intro what is nosfa going to do to counteract the style of k1llsen at the moment. He hasn't got an answer, as we said. He thrives in chaos. k1llsen's structure, he's holding these positions strong, and nosfa's effectively running into him. And it almost feels like whenever k1llsen really wants a kill, he can make one happen. nosfa doesn't have an answer at this point in time, and for me, he's caught between a rock and a hard place, because I would have suggested him try and slow down the pace, chip away at k1llsen, but you know, when you're 11-2 down you don't really have a choice at this point in the game except to keep the pressure up. And that strategy's not been working. So this is a good play, however, because it's the first clean frag he's got. The problem is k1llsen will pick up the heavy and restore the balance.
Absolutely. And speaking of heavy, that last rotation of items, k1llsen was in that situation. Whoa.
No
Okay,
way.
I was going to say that k1llsen was happy to say, right, you can take this mega, I'll go take the heavy, I'm going to have much more stack, you're going to have not much armor, if any. And then his LG has just been so good. That was the item he was happier to take. And it's just been that methodical play of k1llsen all the way through. If there's an item being picked up, most of the time it's because k1llsen is allowing it to be because he's not so worried about it.
But that last kill over in the banana hallway is exactly exemplifies what I'm talking about. Whenever k1llsen feels like he needs a frag, he makes one happen. He had no right to push uphill and get a frag with only, I think it was only had a shotgun to his name. Absolutely no right. So nosfa, he needs to respect k1llsen more if that's...
Oh, speaking of...
Yeah, there you go. He's just pushing
Right
through the doorway
through.
once again. This is almost desperation territory and we've still got 4 minutes to go.
It absolutely is. We've hit that point where the time for patience is gone, you know, and it does create a dynamic where the comeback is nigh impossible. This really could be a GG now, and we've only hit the 6-minute mark, right? Because in this position now, nosfa, yes, you got the speed. It's even champion stack, I guess, medium versus medium, but now you can't do anything, you know, cute. It has to just be, I get a frag, daisy chain it together. You've got to be aggressive. It makes you predictable. I mean, this is a GG right here. I mean, nosfa cannot come back from this.
No, he's definitely not coming back for this. I mean, the GG moment for me, as I said, was pushing up, and when k1llsen pushed up the hallway and got the frag with nothing to his name. I mean, at that point, I would have quit the game, but you can't be doing that at this level, so he'll play it out. The question is, can he at least maintain a level of confidence going into the next one? That's what you've got to be thinking about now, is just getting some momentum back, getting your confidence back, almost sussing out what works and what doesn't work against k1llsen, because you can see here nosfa just doesn't seem to have an answer.
And at this point, kind of like you said, if there's anything that can be taken away from these remaining 3 minutes for nosfa, I guess it's just keeping your hands warm, isn't it? Make sure your execution's still nice, maybe get a couple of frags that's like, okay, you know, small interval between maps, and I can keep that energy up, maybe. I mean, let's keep in mind, our next map is going to be Awoken, right? Sorlag versus Athena. If nosfa's able to keep himself nice and limber as we go into map 2, you're going up against the light champion, hit some of those nice sort of opening shots, and there you go. You know, you're laughing, you're off to a good start. Right now, though, I mean, this is a solid, assertive first match for k1llsen.
What we saw here was really great play from k1llsen, but also just some irrational decision-making from nosfa, forcing the issue when he should have just stepped back, not respecting the positioning of k1llsen. I think we only saw one peak of any impact this game. You know, such critical utility for nosfa. And so what he wanted to do was have these man fights, and k1llsen was actually A, willing to oblige them, but also B, forcing them to happen. So nosfa needs to find a way to slow that tempo.
I think even looking at k1llsen's point of view, the amount of times there was that sort of opening rocket where k1llsen, good position, he's able to listen out for where nosfa is, and he just kind of waits for that inevitable opening rocket that is unchallenged. And we were talking earlier, actually, before the show even started, right? We were chatting about the importance of that initiation, that first little bit of damage, and if it's unreturned, then you're already off to a fantastic start. k1llsen had that almost countless times on this map alone, and that's kind of like what we said. He controls chaotic play, and if k1llsen knows he's against a player that is known for the aggression, then he's fought that before. He knows exactly what to do.
And you can see here, even though this is dead time now, nosfa's unable to get in on k1llsen. k1llsen's holding this mid ground, holding this high ground. He hasn't got control, but he's making nosfa's life a misery. This is just not what we saw from nosfa. nosfa was pushing in too naively, I think is the right
turnaround.
Word, is that he wasn't understanding the way in which k1llsen was playing and taking too much free damage before fights had even begun. Oh, that's great.
And even the end of this map it's almost a soul-crushing 60 seconds it was. As now, we're just going through those final seconds to close out map 1. Obviously, very one-sided for k1llsen. But up until the final moments, It was the kind of map where, we sit there and talk about some players that kind of use it to keep their flow going, get themselves nice and pumped up for map 2 because it's coming. k1llsen didn't even let nosfa do that. But he is clearly feeling quite good, as it will be awoken for our second destination.
Yeah, that was a warm-up game for k1llsen. Unfortunately, he wasn't tested anywhere near enough by nosfa. But we are going into another map pick, one with the rail, one where nosfa has a stack advantage, so can afford to take some of those risks that he was taking in this particular map. But what he can't afford to do is forfeit the positioning, forfeit control as easy as he did do in the early game on map 1 on Corrupted Keep. So it will be more balanced, absolutely, but as we've seen in the past. And a fully stacked Athena on form with confidence when anyone is scary, but in the hands of someone like k1llsen, it's very deadly.
Gotta say, k1llsen, a huge shout out to that LG, especially in just the opening moments of that map, the first half of it. That LG did just so much heavy lifting because he was able to hit so much of it in these clutch situations. And even now, these are all just kind of bonus frags to go through what was a GG basically halfway through. You said it though, Dan, a warm-up for k1llsen has not been tested yet. And if he's playing that good going into Awoken when he plays a notoriously frustrating champion, I think he's in a good spot to get 2 maps here at least.
Absolutely. 50% LG, 2/3, well, a third extra damage than nosfa, or 50% more, should I say. It was definitely the critical weapon. nosfa did get some decent frags on the comeback, but by that point, k1llsen taking off the pressure. 1,000 damage with the shotgun there as well, so just efficiency all around the board.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the items too. I'm looking at the weapon usage, and it was like only heavy machine gun for k1llsen. It's just optimal weapons or bust. There's no room for anything else because his play always fresh off the spawn, and in particular those map starts. That first 10-20 seconds can mean so much for the remainder of the map that you have to play. But k1llsen, he just goes in with such a strong game plan that, with this champion, if you get the good read on where they're going to go, you can almost, take full control in the blink of an eye. And Awoken can be the kind of map that can allow that kind of confidence, Dan. So yeah. I'm kind of keen to think, if we're able to see spectator side, if we can see k1llsen's point of view at the very beginning, I'd be really curious to see how he starts off.
Yeah, it's a completely different dynamic now. I mean, Corrupted Keep, as you rightly pointed out, nosfa got off to the worst start possible, dying within the first 10 seconds, and then losing all map control. And Corrupted Keep is a map where it's very difficult to get a comeback and to force your way back into the game. And quite often, you do that by banging your head against the wall until you break it down. But k1llsen predicted that, because that's what so often happens against most players when you get off to a bad start. You just run at your opponent, try and even up the stacks, and then grind your way back in. k1llsen predicted that, and that's why so many of these fights were one-sided, because he was catching nosfa off guard before he was making the advance. Awoken, you point out, we have a lot more breathing space. You have a rail to fall back on. It's a much bigger map, even though it's still a fairly small map in all the grand scheme of things. And so, with a saw lag as well, you've got the speed and the stack to make these things count.
Fight.
A little bit of extra breathing room potentially now. k1llsen gets the one of his best starts I think he could want, because he's got that opening rail. He knows that nosfa isn't going to have the rail. He's got a heavy, so the stack's not even anymore.
Oh, no.
This was just like the perfect start for k1llsen. nosfa's like, come on! Throw me a
The only
bone
blessing
here.
in disguise at this point in time is that k1llsen missed 2 rails out of the 4, but he's still done so much damage. He'll even be killing nosfa here if he actually decides to switch weapons, which he does.
Hesitated though, was thinking about the highlight reel.
He was, but he played it smart, and here comes nosfa once again, but k1llsen once again predicting the aggression coming out, and nosfa has missed out on both major items. Once again, he still hasn't got the rail. He is on that side of the map, so he should be picking it up, which you can see in the X-ray he has done now. But look at k1llsen, he already knows where nosfa is, and he's waiting out his time for the mid-ground.
This is what I was talking about. This is the kind of map where those big plays on 2 items almost for the price of 1 come into element. And k1llsen having that map start where he gets rail side, he gets heavy side. He knows that nosfa doesn't have the rail, so he can just get complete free damage on the way in. I don't think he could have asked for a better start. And it wasn't just that, it was how he played from that point. He took the situation and made it as good as it could be. And nosfa is in a rather precarious position. If k1llsen's able to just deny now, How does nosfa bring himself back into this map? He has to play it slow. But thankfully, he's got time to do it.
Exactly. The blessing now for nosfa is that he hasn't given up more than one frag, and he's doing exactly what you need to do if you've got absolutely nothing to work with. As a heavy in this situation, it's not the end of the world. If you've given up full map control, the most important thing is not to take damage yourself, to restore parity by just picking up those light armors, because then you get yourself onto an even playing field, and then you have to play calculated and slow to do the first damage to get back into it. This push might be a little bit too much though, as he doesn't even pick up the heavy armor and doesn't have the right weaponry to finish up his opponent. So everything good up until that point. Execution letting him down. And then this rig is painful and pushing off the spawn once again. He's just whittling down his opponent and takes himself up to a 3-0 lead.
I mean, if we're talking of silver linings, this scoreline could already be much more significantly against nosfa. It's just that k1llsen, the rail hasn't actually been all the way there. It has been a little bit all over the place. And that has given nosfa a little bit of space in some of these engagements. But what hasn't let up is just the control from k1llsen. The entire map, you know, he's only just now been able to pick himself up a rail, and that's because I think k1llsen's like, okay, well, you take a rail, I'll take the item. If I'm confident in my rail now, then I don't think it's going to matter all that much. How much of the map was nosfa just kept on the end of a string? It's a scary situation to deal with, Dan.
You say k1llsen's rail isn't hot. I mean, look at that. But the point is, I don't think nosfa's even hit a rail just yet. And that's the defining factor.
He spent most of the map not having one.
Yeah, exactly. Until he does hit one, which he does then. It's just before the pickup, though. He's not able to do anything. And this is the problem. You obviously have to be quite reactionary at this point. He sees k1llsen get a little bit greedy going away. The rocket jump up is no good from nosfa, but the execution lets him down.
Now, at the very least, nosfa does get us a spawn at last that allows him to pick up that rail to compete. If he even gets the chance, he has not really been able to do that so far. But there we go. There's the opening. And at the perfect time, as now nosfa tries to get himself a little bit of a cheeky spawn rail. But the important thing there is the heavy. He can do something with this.
And he's been keeping track of the timings, and that's been key. That's why he was able to steal away the Mega, but no, he's caught from behind! Oh, nosfa! I had no idea where k1llsen was, and that was always going to be a risk making that play.
Oh, k1llsen absolutely going to take full advantage of that. Because now what comes next? You know, the spit comes out as well. A little bit of an awkward encounter, you know, going up the jump pad where there's not a lot of stuff left to work with. k1llsen does not get the damage he wants. However, he is able to somewhat stabilize. There's the drop down. What? Was definitely expecting him to die sooner. That could have been a massive mistake. But, hey, man, things have been going a little bit wrong. But k1llsen just hasn't really been punished that heavily for it. You know, it hasn't cost him anything yet.
No, but k1llsen is hitting the clutch shots.
Yep.
He had missed that rail, but he done the drop down. He was certainly dead. nosfa trying to make a pressure count here once again, but this time he hasn't got the stack, and this is now reminiscent of map 1. He's getting into the territory where he's feeling desperate at this point. And he's not making the right moves prior to the engagement. Once again, he's come in, but it's just before the item. Of course you're not going to win that fight. He needs to do the pre-work. He needs to keep the pressure higher before the item rotation and be able to make these moves count. And there's a big rocket.
Yeah, we all heard that click as well, running out of ammo at a pretty disastrous time. And hang on a minute, this is the opening. You know, this is where the shoe becomes on the other foot, as now k1llsen spawning with, you know, no armor, there's nothing to work with. And if nosfa can cycle this correctly, then this deficit, very manageable. You know, as a wise man once said, there is still time. And I just think that now k1llsen, he's going to have to shift gears. It's something he's famous for doing. And he's got a rail as well, so even though nosfa, you know, in a pretty decent position to make something happen, I think k1llsen's still going to be really in charge of what's happening.
Yeah. It was interesting to see nosfa shift gears, though, because the first 3 minutes were very passive, and then he felt like it just wasn't working. And there you go, he's pushed in, and he's won himself back-to-back items, and this is where the Sorlag becomes scary. And this is also where k1llsen's clutch rails have been letting him down now. He's not really hit a good rail for a while. He's now pushing in, trying to use the stack advantage, the score advantage to his advantage, and it makes it work.
That fight was a disaster for nosfa, though. However, able to push forward, do a ton of damage in return. k1llsen, the important thing, item was in hand, and nosfa really stuck licking his wounds. Now, this should by all means be a fight that k1llsen can win, as even though the Mega got picked up, you got no armor, and you're a bigger target.
And now k1llsen will want to slow the pace down a little bit. It's been very frantic for the past 2 or 3 minutes. He would definitely want to get back control, just play around his rail, play around positions, and try and keep nosfa away. He won't want to take any of these messy in-game fights. Oh, caught on the ledge and levitated to his death. That's a lovely free flag.
And it levitates me. Oh!
What's that from?
It's I can't say the name.
Fair enough.
It's a movie. Either way, here we go. We'll push forward now. I'm sure someone got that reference at some point. If not, I got it, and that's all that matters. But now k1llsen looking to just play this game of slippery escape. You're going to have that mobility to match Sorlag. Now, the instant repositioning. k1llsen keeping the items on hand. I mean, this is the perfect position for him now. And nosfa, time's running out. It has been a rather messy map in some areas, and then just moments of greatness. So this is the kind of Awoken that I like.
Yeah, and it's very much cat and mouse now, playing keep away, just predicting his opponent, playing with the rail, almost playing with him. And nosfa, you can almost sense, knows it's futile at this point. Well, I think 7 frags the difference here. 2 minutes to go.
And in this position, k1llsen's going to just do what he always does. He's going to sit pretty. He's going to keep it nice and efficient for the remaining sort of 2 minutes that we have left. And what we can really do now is just reflect on, well, what we have coming up. Blood Covenant, a map that k1llsen's really, really powerful on. So I just think this has been a really wonderful series from him so far. Everything's kind of worked out well. He's had good spawns. He's played really well off those spawns. And yeah. I think nosfa has just struggled to, I think, just break out of this control that k1llsen's been putting forward. You know, he's so famous for having this restrictive style on how you can't really play against him. And nosfa has had no surprises. You know, this is almost nothing k1llsen hasn't seen a million times.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. The control from k1llsen has been absolutely spot on, and if we look back at the narrative of this game, I definitely preferred the way nosfa was playing the opening first few minutes. Yes, it was a 1-0 lead, but it was defensive, it was more calculated, it was just his execution was letting him down. There was the definite shift in gears, and you could see these type of moves coming out where he was forcing the issue. But because he wasn't doing the initiation work before that, he was going up against a very stacked k1llsen in the right position. Yes, he made it count a few times, but as you said, that was kind of interspersed moments of glory, and that's not a sustainable strategy. I felt the opening few minutes was a better reflection of how he should have got back into this game. He just needed to refine that approach.
And there were a couple of fights that were kind of here and there on both sides, situations that nosfa did what he could, but ultimately there were a couple more. Almost the second a fight went a little bit wrong for k1llsen, and nosfa was able to kind of capitalize. The very next sequence was a disaster for nosfa, whether it was that LG juggle, whether it was just catching him in the wrong side of town, the wrong corner, whatever it was. k1llsen kind of took a situation that could have been bad and pretty much eliminated it straight away. So a 2-0 at least for k1llsen, working on a 3-0. If it continues this way, I think it's fair to assume that we will see that. But Blood Covenant, it's always a little bit different to these other maps. It's going to be less aggressive, more space to work with. However, more rail heavy, if that's even possible.
Yes. We move on to the map where we also have 2 champions without any significant movement capabilities. So a lot more methodical, a lot more strategical with Galena versus Visor than we would have seen on the first 2 maps. And again, I just feel that plays into k1llsen's hands because it allows him to control the positions and work his opponent, something that he's done very well. It might force nosfa away from this hyper-aggressive style that we've seen predominantly over the last 2 maps. That could be a benefit, but as you rightly pointed out, it has a lot more rail, it has a lot more positional necessities to it, and it's just a map we associate more strongly with k1llsen. We've seen some good performances from nosfa on this map, but if you look at the series so far, he's struggling to find any chinks in k1llsen's armor.
Now that was the difficult thing in those opening sort of 3 minutes or so where nosfa was playing a lot more careful, I think is fair to say. At the same time, k1llsen's just game of denial was fantastic. Most of that opening, it felt almost impossible for nosfa to pick up a rail, and when he finally did, it's because k1llsen wanted one of the major items instead. And you're in that position where k1llsen just has a chokehold on almost all of the major items, and you can't get a rail. That is a nightmare scenario. And to be fair, Blood Covenant, there are ways on a map like this to also deny those key weapons, and I feel like that's just something k1llsen's going to look to do here.
If you just look at the weapon damage disparity as well, it just emphasizes how effective k1llsen's positioning's been, and his just ability to catch you off guard. Like, double the damage with the LG is insane. And you've already pointed out that nosfa's rail wasn't clicking, and not only that, the switch in strategies from k1llsen was also perfect. I think the big turning point for me was when k1llsen was under that significant pressure in the mid game from nosfa. That moment where he went aggressive, following one of the frags up on the stairwell by the light armor, got the frag. That just turned the game on its head so dramatically, because that would have been a moment where most players would have continued to almost retreat into their shell. But he recognized, he sensed a sense of a moment of weakness and made it count.
However, all that's left on the table is an opportunity to make it not as severe of a loss, right? You know, getting that map at the very end, it's the difference between a 3-0 and a 2-1, and I think every player is going to want to have one of those outcomes. So, you know, this is that final chance to kind of almost have the last laugh, and something that might, I think, maybe God's bleed, right? That we kind of use that every now and then, where ultimately this is the only chance you have to make any kind of difference. k1llsen's going to much prefer a 3-0. I think if he doesn't get a 3-0 here, he's going to be frustrated with himself, because he's a perfectionist. And if you can take that away from him, I think it's going to be better than nothing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. On paper, this map should be fairly low scoring in context of the first two. It's a slower map by nature, and you've got two champions that are less able to make these crazy moves. The challenge for nosfa is he's going to be very much based around those totems, very much based around playing a slower tempo, and you've got k1llsen, who has the piercing sight, will generally have probably a positional advantage and a rail on an EU server. So the odds are definitely stacked against nosfa, and he's going to have to slow the tempo down here, for me, in order to get any sort of outcome and really drag it out and bring out like a 2-1, 3-2 kind of victory. Really low scoring, really more structured and controlled.
As we always tend to do with k1llsen, we'll keep a keen eye on how things begin, because it has been already so far, I think, quite a standard set of how the rest of the map goes. Let's just rewind and think about those. Corrupted Keep, perfect start, aggressive push, getting nosfa in the first 10 seconds, and it was control from there. Awoken, very much the same thing. Blood Covenant does not lend itself to that as much because of just the size of the map alone, and this time round, k1llsen getting that opening information. nosfa probably gonna assume that the piercing sight was used. However, oh god, 100 damage just like that, and he gets the frag.
He will pick up the mega though, but you know, huge split on the items at this point. No rail to his name. k1llsen will now have middle ground advantage once again. You said let's keep an eye on the start, and you see exactly why.
And I think that was going to be, ooh, a cute little attempt there for k1llsen to actually pick up the rail, as it was still there to be collected, but just kind of stuck you in no man's land. nosfa made the push. nosfa does have the timing, as he did pick up the item before. Nice little jump there. Yeah. I love that.
Nice move. k1llsen already making sure he cuts off the progress to the mega. Again, that type of small move, just awareness of the pathing of his opponent, wins him a mega, gets him some free damage, and gets him back into at least stat control. Those are the small details that make these kind of players great.
Absolutely. I think for a long time we would look at these champions and be like, you know, they've got less opportunity to maneuver around and this and that because they just don't have the available, I think, utility. But hey, I mean, as long as you've got a nail gun, you can do something. And k1llsen aware. I like those little details. However, speaking of which, positional advantage so far definitely favors k1llsen as he gets a little bit of damage unreturned, and on top of that able to get a mega gigantic split between these two items. And it does feel like nosfa has just been relegated into the catacombs. He has got the overstack though.
Yeah, the challenge is, as you just pointed out, k1llsen's controlling that high ground, and without a rocket, nosfa can't make a move up, so he's had to completely forfeit control in order to try and get back onto the high ground because he's already there, cutting him off by the teleporter. And nosfa, once again, will have to retreat into his second home at this point, which will be the catacombs as he gets a full rocket. He's lost one totem. There'll be another one up in a second if k1llsen doesn't find any of the further ones to regain that overstack. k1llsen trying to find his prey though, has given up that high ground for the first time in the last couple of minutes, and nosfa need to rain down some pain here to make it count, but there's a lovely little rail from below. How does he do it?
He just takes situations that you would never assume someone can get significant damage! Oh my god, hello! Courtesy, k1llsen. Absolutely unreal of a push. I guess, you know, having get a few of those rockets back on track, but this has just been a ridiculous 2.5 minutes. k1llsen finding shots in ways that you just don't understand. The rockets have been, I think, the real standout weapon so far for him. Just finding damage. It's unbelievable.
Those last two frags looked great, but it was so sloppy from nosfa. Maybe he didn't know the timing of the mega, but you can't just be standing there with just a tribot to your name when you have a fully stacked German running at you. And then the second frag, trying to jump over to rail, when again, k1llsen's in the vicinity. They're just careless mistakes. And they're the type of mistakes, unfortunately, nosfa needs to cut out his game to take it to the next level. You can't afford to be giving a player like k1llsen 2 free frags, free rails all the time. He will make it count.
Oh, I did like that from nosfa. That was a absolute strong decision that he's going to jump down towards one of those lights, you know, because it's what you would do. It's what you want to try and stop the bleeding, and he had the position already good, even though he dropped down. So it has given nosfa a lifeline back into this map. There's still plenty of the map left to go, but k1llsen, when you play this efficiently and everything is hitting its mark, being able to just control that potential frustration that sets in. Oh my lord!
My word.
Fantastic.
Not sure how k1llsen did anywhere near as much damage as he did. He got caught off guard and was responding really slow. Lovely follow-up from nosfa though to restore parity. Also has that overstack, so he's less concerned about getting onto the mega, although he will want to be pressuring it. Nice get away from k1llsen though to get away with no damage to his name. He's only got the lightning gun though. Lovely catch from nosfa, bouncing him around. Once again, a lot of damage coming out from k1llsen. He might feel confident, depending on his spawn, to pressure this next heavy.
But pressuring the heavy when you've only just spawned, you don't have as much weapons as your opponent does, and there is still the k1llsen on the field. Those totems are going to constantly put nosfa in a position where he can do something about it. However, k1llsen again looking to make something happen here.
Yeah, nosfa really needs to get this rail. This is only advantage if he can restore the ammo here. And this has to be the objective now, is make sure k1llsen doesn't get a rail and just abuse that difference. Abuse the fact your opponent doesn't have that long-range weaponry. k1llsen with the stack though could just afford to stand around, spam it out, use the heavy machine gun. But nosfa still needs to fight tooth and nail to stop it happening.
nosfa will be just putting himself in a position to damage on the heavy. Knows he can't pick it up, but what he can do is perhaps make it not so important to collect, as these rockets have been good as well. But the problem now, nosfa, oh, you are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Has to make a decision now. Chooses to go up the jump pad. Thankfully, k1llsen, you know, dipping back to take that mega meant that nosfa wasn't overexposed, but worried to see him there. He took so much damage. This does mean he can now pick up that light, so he can keep himself in the fight. And obviously, the more totems he can put down in the situation, the better. But I think he has now given up any kind of weapon control just to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, he will have given up the rail now, and the issue comes in that nosfa wasn't doing enough damage. He was giving up all map control in exchange for positioning to protect the rail. But k1llsen was fine. He was able to soak up all the items, and even though he had the rail, he could afford to just run at his opponent with rockets and heavy machine gun, because he could eat 3 or 4 rails in a row. And look at it now. nosfa's just running for his dear life, and k1llsen's barreling in with that lightning gun to get another frag. And it all comes down to map control. That's been the story of the series so far. I don't even know the last time that nosfa touched a major item in this particular game.
That heavy machine gun is all he's going to have access to. But you know what? It's looking a little bit like the classic. Those rails don't quite hit their mark, and you're just getting damage, damage, damage. This is going to be frustrating for k1llsen, that he wasn't able to really hit anything in that exchange, because that has now meant this fight towards heavy is going to be quite complicated.
You're at the point of no return in those engagements, how awkward they are as the railer. Because if you miss your first one, you almost feel obliged to do a second. And if you miss the second, you just got to keep trying to rail to make up the deficit. So, nice play by nosfa to keep that going, but he has to be aware of where k1llsen is. Risky to go up that jump pad.
It already is looking like a lower scoring game, so we're right on the money there. However, k1llsen doesn't get enough damage, and nosfa happy to punish that. Has a lead, but stacks quite low. Heavy in position, but there is going to be a massive push from k1llsen because he knows even if nosfa collects this heavy, he's not going to have much health at all.
The only benefit of k1llsen having this much control is that nosfa gets free reign to build his totem empire down below, and k1llsen just hasn't got the time to go and find them. So at least nosfa has that going for him, and then all things considered, it's 6-6. He cannot ask for anything better at this stage of the game, considering he has no items.
k1llsen steals the heavy, and he knows he's done a lot of damage, so I think this is going to be a rather scary situation here for nosfa. There is going to be a little bit of armor available, perhaps. But I think this is a pretty critical moment.
Nice, he's keeping control of the timing, even though he has no idea, or sorry, no control of that item, so really well played by nosfa. The big difference here is he's just not going super aggressive. As I say that, walking through a doorway, k1llsen waiting for him. But he's playing more controlled, and he's actually doing the damage now ahead of these pickups. He's manufacturing these frags, and that's been key. k1llsen has picked that up without taking too much this time. nosfa's going to pray k1llsen doesn't make it across in the next 3 seconds, but he's there. He has to retreat, and this will surely be a free frag for k1llsen.
It's not just the frag, it's what comes next. k1llsen knows that down here there's only access to a few weapons, however, trying to make sure he doesn't bite off more than he can chew. However, not picking up the Mega straight away, that's going to completely screw with nosfa's timing.
Yeah, nosfa will have known that there was no way k1llsen had the time to get in and out, so he will have an idea of when it is.
Uh-oh.
Now he's just stuck, he has to fight this. Definitely k1llsen's weapons.
Moving on swiftly. I can't tell if k1llsen is actually, if his feed is working. No, it is,
No,
it is.
it is. There's a move.
Just stone cold.
30 seconds to go, he has to be serious. Big rocket coming out, he knows this heavy is the biggest item at this point. He needs to do some sort of damage, not him out. Oh, he can't connect with the second. k1llsen's on mega pursuit, but nosfa has the time to get back across. k1llsen listening out, he's come through the mid-ground. Big rocket to come out from the German, a second does connect.
Oh my lord!
Somehow nosfa survives, but so does k1llsen. He's still railable. nosfa is not, but there's a big rail, he's knocked him down. k1llsen gets out alive, but so does nosfa. He's on the right side of the map for the items. He's also taken out that totem empire, and nosfa is counting his lucky stars. He's alive, but how has he not finished off k1llsen?
I am absolutely gobsmacked that no one died in that exchange. However, as we have entered sudden death, this has got to be it. nosfa, there's barely anything to bring that stack back up. It doesn't even matter that the Mega's up at this point because k1llsen's on the hunt, and this is it. That is going to be a clean turnaround, but oh my god, that fight near Mega at the end, that was a real clencher. It was.
It's the right adjective, it was. And really well played to nosfa to regroup, come back in it after maps 1 and 2 being, you know, pretty poor in terms of scoreline perspective. But this is what I wanted to see from nosfa more and more, and I mentioned it during the game. He was forging his way into the game. He was making calculated moves. He was taking up positions and doing the chip damage he needed. His rail wasn't particularly strong all game long, but he hit the clutch ones. It was more the fact there was patience there. He maintained a good oversight of the items. He played slow. He respected the positioning of k1llsen. And because of that, he was able to build frags and build a lead through a structured approach. And that's what I really like to see.
Now, we can see we didn't actually manage to catch the fight here in the replay. The final confrontation is going to be the one, but Yeah, that was absolutely unreal. k1llsen hitting so much damage, and not only that, but I think the rocket knockback alone put nosfa in an awkward position where he couldn't actually land that final rail.
Yep.
There were a couple of shots that if he got that one hit, it would be a 2-1. But just k1llsen's defensive play, we talked about controlling the chaos. That was a prime example. Well done, k1llsen.
And it's showing through the damage distribution here how much more control and awareness that nosfa had. You know, previous maps, k1llsen was massively outgunning nosfa, particularly on the lightning gun and rail. Completely reversed it, even across the board. And it's because nosfa wasn't putting himself in situations where k1llsen was able to capitalize upon those weaponry. He kept him under pressure, he kept the angles tight, he made sure he understood where k1llsen was at all times. That's the nosfa we need to see more of in future weeks.
And that's going to be just one series of a fair few as we get through the day. k1llsen taking a 3-0 over nosfa. nosfa going to be kind of gutted, I think, that he couldn't secure that final map. It was so close, but I think k1llsen just playing as outrageously good as we expected. So that's all we can say about that one. Our second series is going to be CNZ versus Rafa. After a short break, we'll come back with more Quake Pro League.